Episode 7. So we've gone through all these different reasons why you want to make single span surfaces. Of course, it would make sense then to talk about how do we actually make single span surfaces in Rhino? Which of the Rhino commands are friendly to single span surfaces and which are not? Spoiler, this is mostly going to be like a tour to failure. It's a little crazy how few commands in Rhino actually create what you want them to create when you care about surface quality. So what I've set up for this module here is two very similar sets of input. And on the one on the right here, we have a degree 3 surface, a degree 3 surface. They're actually identical. And then we have curvature, continuous, degree 5 blends, forming this quad patch here. This one on the left, this is a little bit harder of a test case. It's very similar, but what I've done is for each of these pairs, opposite edges, I've mixed up the degrees. And so this is degree 5, and I've actually edited it so it doesn't act like a degree 3 even though it's degree 5, right? So it's a true degree 5 shape. And this one is degree 3. This is the same as this one over here. And all I've done here is instead of having a curvature continuous blend here, I've made it tangent here on the inside edge. So we have a mix of degree on opposite edges. And we can see now, I'm going to go through all the commonly used surfacing commands in Rhino, see what we get, talk about what makes nice surfaces and what doesn't. So let's start with sweep 1. And of course, in both of these examples, I have one more curve than I need for sweep 1, but there's going to be an interesting difference that you'll see between sweep 1 and sweep 2. So that's why I'm going to start with sweep 1. So let's start with our easiest case here, this one on the right. I'm going to say sweep 1. I'm going to click this curve, and I'm going to give it this edge and this edge. Now, instantly looking at this, seeing all these iso curves, this is a pass. That's a hard pass, dog. That is a hard pass. We do not want this for a primary surface. Let me show you. I'll turn the points on. Right, we've got so many points. Let's select those points. Cell PT, 76 surface points on this. Ugh. Okay, but there was an option that I did not click that I could click. So we're going to go back to sweep 1. We're going to feed it this and this again. And what we're going to click is our simple sweep option. So our simple sweep option, we can see immediately, is creating something that looks to me like a single span surface. And I don't know why the points are all over the place. Seriously, I don't know what this is about. I do not know. But at least it's single span. So let's give it partial credit, right? This is the easy case where we've got 3, 5, and 3, right? So we're going 3 to 3, and we have a 5 in between them. This is interesting, I guess. Let's run sweep 1 on our left example here. Same thing, we're going to feed it this curve as our rail, and our degree 3 now to our degree 5. We can see if we don't use simple sweep, right, we still end up with this very much overly dense surface that we do not want for a primary surface. And so we say preview, and at least, again, we're going to give this thing partial credit. It actually looks better than the other one did. I mean, this is a single span surface. This is not great, but better, I guess. And notice that it actually elegantly bridged between a degree 3 and a degree 5 surface. So sweep 1, you can mix degree on opposite ends of a sweep 1 if you feel like using that as your primary surfacing tool. Obviously, you know, when you think about it though, you know, like this is not, obviously we can match this, right? We can sculpt this. This is matchable. This is sculptable. We can change degree. We can move things around. It's an okay output. It's just not as good as it could be. And what I'll show you is that there's better outputs. Now on to sweep 2. So for sweep 2, back to our easy case, 5, 5, 3, 3. I'm going to feed it these 2 rails. I'm going to feed it this and this. And again, if I say do not simplify, I end up with something that follows my geometry. It has this kind of arch in the middle of it. This is another, it's just a little odd, but okay. And if I hit simple sweep, right, it does indeed give me a single span surface. That is 3 in one direction and 5 in the other. I don't know why it's moving these verts up here like this. It doesn't, there's, you know, we can move them, right? So we have the ability, if we want, we can move these things down. So slightly odd that the surface that it's created, but not terrible. Like we're getting slightly better. Of course, we can also swap our rails and our profiles. And in theory, and I'm doing that right now, in theory, we can use this to add more control to this surface. In theory. The problem is, as you can see, we've got all these iso curves. It's creating something that's just needlessly dense. There is no need. Again, let's run cellpt. 108 surface points. Why? Why? Why is it doing this? But we can still run simple sweep. But running simple sweep, what you will see, simple sweep is sort of the right answer if we wanted to use a sweep 2 rail, right? But once we do that, we lose these curve options, like setting tangency or curvature along our rail edges, right? So we're not really getting anything by reversing which are our rails and which are our profiles. It gets slightly worse when we go and we use sweep 2 on this one where we're mixing degree, right? So let's do this and this and this and this, right? So we're using our curves as our rails. We no longer even have the simple sweep option. It just is unavailable to us. We're getting this wacky sort of rise in the middle, right? If we wanted to get rid of that rise, we turn this on. Sorry, like we've got way too many curves here, or way too many points in order for us to edit this thing. And so this is not, for my thinking, a good, valid primary surface. This is setting you up for failure down the road. So now let's move on to everyone's seemingly favorite command when they first start out, network surface. So if I use network surf, let's feed it in. You can tell by my tone already, I do not approve of this command. Let's preview this. Right, so we've got something that looks fairly decent. It's not getting too much of a rise in the middle like other options were, like sweep was. But good God, what? 160 surface points. No. Just no. It gets worse. It doesn't get better. Yeah, oh, I don't know. Now it's less on this one, fewer surface points. But either way, Network surface seems to be one of those commands that people find when they first start using Rhino, and they glom onto it and they decide it's their solution to all their problems, and they create ever more complicated rat's nests of curves to feed into network surface, because network surface will allow you to do these things. And I have been doing this long enough to have rather strong opinions about it. And so my rather strong opinion is that network surface should never, ever, ever be used as a primary surfacing tool. I would go so far as to say that I don't think I've used network surface in a model in the last 4 or 5 years. It is not necessary. In fact, I think that network surface, when we talk about, I think about this curves into surfaces out workflow that I have essentially been putting this entire series together to refute. I think of it as almost like a methodological box canyon, where you start going down this path with curves in, surfaces out, and at a certain point, things stop making sense or stop working well. And network surface is really, to my mind, a huge culprit, a big, big part of this problem, where people just think they can feed kind of anything into network surface, and then they get further down the road and they're asking simple questions like, well, why does my model have wrinkles in it? Why can't I get my model watertight, right? Understand that, we have a degree 3 surface here and a degree 5 surface here. And these points, this is being done to tolerance. Not exactly, right? This is not a single span degree 5 surface across this edge at all, right? So this is just being done to tolerance. And of course, you can dial your tolerance up really tight, but why are we doing things to tolerance when we could be doing them exactly, right? Doing this to tolerance means when I pass this off to some other system, there's a chance that it fails. Even though it's untrimmed, there's a chance that it doesn't work, that it doesn't go watertight. So network surface is on my forever no list for primary surfacing commands. And also really on my no list for just using in general. I really honestly think that if you understand correct patch layout, if you understand how to correctly build kind of any model, you simply do not need network surface. You don't. On to another favorite horrendous command, patch. So patch, as you can see from the ISO curves here, like we're not even building something that sort of flows from one to the other. And patch now is done entirely to tolerance. In fact, all 4 of my edges here are trimmed. I have literally seen YouTube tutorial how-tos where the person has stated, I have this 4-sided hole here, but I'm going to fill it with patch. I do not understand that ever. There is no reason for that ever. Cell PT, yeah, we have 169 surface points. Nice. No. So, let's try it over here. See what we get. Right? Yeah. Same sort of thing. Of course, very similar. Yeah. Patch is, again, one of those commands that people glom onto as this sort of Hail Mary. Well, it starts as a Hail Mary, and then people start using it as a primary surfacing tool. And realize, like I said, every single one of these edges is trimmed, which means that it's all done to tolerance. And it increases the chance that when you pass this off to some different CAD platform, that this does not go watertight. And it, especially when you have a four-sided hole, and you should always be in the practice of trying to make any n-sided hole, creatively working that problem into a four-sided hole, right? I've shown you using the trimmed corner how we can take like a three-sided hole and make it a four-sided hole. There again, there's no purpose for patch. If you care about surface modeling, if you care about making high quality models, you will never use patch. And so I will freely admit that people will disagree with that opinion, but my opinion is that if you are making, if you care about surface quality and you're making production surfacing for molding and tooling and you're making nice freeform models, don't use patch. Don't use network surface. You do not have to. You do not need to. You need to find better, more creative ways of solving your problem. Just to beat on the patch and network surface dead horse a little longer, a little more. Let me show you why it matters that a command like patch creates everything with trimmed edges. We had here this curve that we use as input is a degree 5 single span curve. It's nice and smooth. Well, this is a trim of a patch surface. So if I dupe edge here and I F10 it, look, this was my curve before, right? This was what I was feeding into patch. And this is the edge curve that patch has generated, right? So understand that if I go and I match something to this, in order to go watertight, it's likely going to have to inherit this kind of crazy point density, right? And if I run curvature graph on this, it's got, let's see, it goes negative here. I don't know. Look, it's not even continuous internally, right? Like you can see this is actually discontinuous here. And so, what happens when you make models with surfaces like this is that you create this as a primary surface. Well, anything that you match to this inherits these problems, and so on and so forth, right? And so, it's the way that I think of it, and it's very appropriate for what's going on in the world right now, is that one surface will infect the next one, and the next, and the next, and the next, and suddenly you have an entire model that has incredible point density on all your surfaces. Because in order to get something to join up to this or match to it, tangency, it has to have this same kind of crazy point distribution and point density. Another thing to point out, I'm going to go back to network surf, which I would say I hate more than patch, probably. Understand, like I said, that network surf does everything to within tolerance. And so I'm going to just do a little blend here, a tangent blend between two straight lines, right? The simplest thing you could think of. I'm gonna join this. So these are three curves, right? I'm gonna join them into one. I'm gonna make a duplicate of this, and I'm just gonna connect them with straight lines. So this is another thing that I see people do with network surface, is they take something that should, really, if I wanted to create this, right? This is a soft corner of a box, whatever. What I could do very easily is use the loft command, and we're going to get into the loft command after this. But I could simply do the loft command and make this out of three simple surfaces. As clean and easy as could be, right? And this again, this goes to patch layout, right? Like this should be a surface. This should be a surface, and the blend between the two of them should be a single surface. Because now I can edit this, right? I can take this surface and I can say, actually, I want the edge over here. And I want it to have a little bit of an angle to it. And okay, now I want to match this to that, right? This is sculpt and match. Maybe that's what I want, right? This is sculpt and match versus, let's pretend we are the curves in, surfaces out user, and we've decided what we want to do is we want to, because we've said to ourselves like, well, if I just join these two together, then I have a four-sided hole. So let's use network surface, right? And let's feed all these curves in. First of all, look at this isocurve density, right? It's pretty incredible. $264 surface points. Right? We had before this what we had 8. We had 4 here, 4 here, so that's 8 plus 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 8 more 16. We had 16 points across 3 surfaces before, right? And now we have 264 points, but it gets even worse. Let's look at curvature graph. Check this out. Look at the curvature graph that you get from this. Not only this, because keep in mind, this is doing it to within tolerance. And what you've done is you've fed it 2 straight lines with an arc or a curve between the two of them. Look at this. The surface is actually going concave here, right? This entire thing is either supposed to be flat or convex, and you're getting little bits of it that are even going concave. To say nothing of this, frankly, super garbagey curvature graph here, right? So you look at this curvature graph and you think, well, if I need to cut a hole in this, let's say I do need to use a trim and match something into here. When I talk about one surface infecting another, like all of this garbagey curvature then goes into my next surface. It infects it. You can tell I have strong opinions about this. But this is, so I see this over and over and over again. People are feeding network surface into things, and then they're getting a bit further down the road, and things aren't making sense. These things aren't working out anymore, and they're getting wrinkles and tangency issues and curvature issues, and they're saying, I have this crease here. I don't know why it's there, right? And a lot of it just simply goes back to poor primary surfacing. So now that I've spent all this time complaining about the commands that don't work, let me show you some things that do actually work. Surface from edge curves. This is now when I'm using stock Rhino. And so again, this is one of the reasons why I use the shape plugin, is that a lot of these commands that I've shown, like blend surf, right? There's the shape version of blend surf that doesn't blow up my topology or my point count. That keeps my surfaces nice and clean. But for those who are in stock Rhino, you can work around this. This is still workable. And surface from edge curves should be your primary surfacing tool for any time that you have something that is not just a loft, and we're gonna do loft last, but loft, of course, wouldn't really work for this kind of geometry. But what does work is surfaces from edge curves. So we just feed it our curves here, our edge, boom, beautiful, right? This is our easy case where we've got 3, 3, 5, 5, and it's gorgeous. And unlike what we had with sweep, where we had this sort of pronounced lift here, still looks to me like it's a little bit up for some reason, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. Let's see. What does it do here? Nope, it doesn't. It goes right through that point. So no, this makes exactly what you would want. The result is exactly what you would expect, right? This is the easy case. Let me show you that also for the more difficult case. it is equally elegant in output. So 3, 5, 3, 5. Boom. Beautiful. Single span surface. It follows our curves. There's nothing funny going on in the middle here. And then what we do here, of course, surface from edge curves, there's no guarantee that any of this is continuous, right? Or that this is tangency or curvature, right? But again, sculpt and match, right? We want to create these surfaces first that allow us to achieve the form that we want. And going all the way back to, thinking about like what is the degree and what degree do I need to express this idea, right? Worry about that first. Generate your surface, then worry about matching it. It's a much, much more editable way of working. And again, we want to be working directly with surfaces, not with the curves. And so this is what allows you to do that. So, we see right now out of the gate, it's not tangent continuous. It's close to it in terms of, it's around 1 degree for each of these. But again, we have our match surf command for this, right? And so if we want to make this tangent, all we just do is match it. And now when we go back and we analyze this, right, it's exactly 0. This is fabulous. And then, if we want to go to G2, we can go to G2. Understand that like this curve right here, this is a degree 3 curve. And this curve is of course, it's tangent, but it's not curvature continuous. So, and this speaks to a greater problem. A lot of the times, we create input geometry that rules out the continuity that we want, right? So a lot of times we even think that we're creating input geometry that's conducive to the matching that is required of our model, either tangent or curvature continuous. And a lot of times we get it wrong or we mess it up, right? But rather than going back and wrestling with your input curves, you should simply be matching your surfaces, right? But just one thing to tuck in the back of your head is so often, so often, I get geometry from clients or I see people, modelers, creating geometry that does not allow them to achieve the continuity that they desire in their models, right? So if I want both of these to be curvature continuous, but I have a degree 3 tangent continuous curve here, I need to say, well, hey, I can make this curvature continuous, but I can't make this curvature continuous and also conform to this curve here because this curve is not curvature continuous, right? So if I just say match surf, and I match this curvature. Now this curve here is curvature continuous. So I should be able to have it adhere to that. In fact, it's not even going to move right now. So I'll match both of these sides, right? And so what we can see is we've diverged now. Let me just delete this dot. We've diverged from this input curve. Because maybe what we've said to ourselves is, well, I care more about the continuity than I care about this specific input curve, right? It's more about the idea than the specifics, or the continuity than the specifics, right? And again, every point, when we're matching curvature here, every point on this surface is set by the match command. We have access to every single point because it's 3 rows here for curvature and 3 rows here for curvature, right? And so now, when I go back and I analyze these with my global matching analysis, right? I mean, they are perfectly matched, right? Not only they're perfectly matched, if I then, if this is my primary surface and I go to build things off of this model, well, I know that this edge curve here, unlike that patch example I gave you, this edge here is just a single span degree 5 edge. It has all of 6 points, right? And so I can match something else to this edge super easily. And it will go, as long as it's degree 5 as well, it will go perfectly watertight. And it will make my life easier when I want to say, change the shape of this edge. Maybe I want to sculpt this edge and I say, no, I want it to look like that. Well, I can do that, right? So surface from edge curves should be your go-to for any four-sided hole. And again, you shouldn't really be worrying too much about whether or not it's exactly matching an adjacent surface, right? The idea is just to get the party started. It's just to get the surface there with the right point count, the right degree, and the points distributed how you want to express the idea that you want to express. Then worry about matching it. So another thing that I notice a lot on the forums is that this curves into surfaces out mindset leads people to get really focused on, they say, well, what commands did you use to make that, right? Oh, well, I used sweep 2 here, and I used these rails, and then I used sweep 1 here, and then I did, patch here, and then I did network surf here. And when you free yourself from that mindset, the specifics of what you used to create the initial surface become completely moot. And it almost becomes like a silly question. Of course, they say there's no dumb questions, but sometimes there are. But, really it becomes totally beside the point. The point isn't what you use to start. We can see there's a vanishingly small collection of commands that will do what we want, right? So it's not, you shouldn't get so caught up in what you use to start, so long as whatever you use to start creates what you want, right? If it spits out the right point count and degree and allows you to express the design idea, run with it. Go with that, right? And don't think so much about, like, well, it's a sweep 2, and we're using these as the rails, and these as the profiles. Oh, no, wait, swap that, but right. That's just, nope, that is not going to help you down the road. So let's finish this off with a look at the loft command. And the loft command is another one that actually gets it right. I've created, and I've sort of rearranged my shapes here to sort of be more in line with like a wing surface, right? So like wings, boat holes, like, we say we're lofting a hull, and we're lofting a wing. And the reason is that oftentimes we're using the lofting command to create these things, right? So on the left, I've got my degree 3 surface. On the right, I have my degree 5 surface. If I say loft, and I select these two, and I say straight sections, right? What I end up with is exactly what you want, right? It's degree 5 across here, because it in the background has taken this degree 3 edge and bumped it up to a degree 5 edge. So it matches to this perfectly, right? If we wanted to, we could change degree here, right? We could change it to, say, degree 3, keep it 5, and we could use our match surface command. If we want to match this to something, it's sculpt and match, right? If this is our shape, who knows? But loft will indeed make nice surfaces. And let me show you another really cool loft trick. And this goes back to, I was tracing that Spitfire. And another thing I see a lot of people struggling with is how to make like elliptical shaped wings and such. And here's one way to do it. There's a couple really, really slick ways to do it, and this is one of them. What you'll notice is, this is my leading edge here, and this is my trailing edge, because this is a very simplified wing. We don't actually have a curved leading edge on this, but This is just to demonstrate the idea. And what you'll notice is, both of these are degree 3 curves, and I've lined these points up. And so this is a really helpful little trick. You want to have the same point count and the same point distribution, right? Laterally, span-wise, if this is a wing, you want to have the same point distribution span-wise. Because then what we want to do is I'm going to duplicate this edge right here. And I'm going to copy it from here to here and here. Okay, I'm going to delete that one on there. And then I'm going to use my scale command. And there's another couple ways of doing this, but this is one. I'm just going to scale these curves. And then I'm going to loft through all these curves. And instead of saying straight sections, I want to use loose. And what loose says is use these curves to set my control points on my surface. It's not run my surface through this, right? If we want our surface to follow this trailing edge curve, obviously we don't want it to actually follow through this curve here because it extends beyond it, right? What we're saying with loose is use the points here as my control points on my surface, which is exactly what it's done. And so it's pretty cool, right? We've created, we have now the ability to set, I see a lot of people using like sweep to generate these kinds of things, and they get into all the problems that we've of course seen, right? So loose is one way to skin this cat, where you end up with, look at that. This is a single span surface. It is degree 5 in one direction and degree 3 in the other. This is perfect. So I hope that this was useful. I think that this gives you should have now a lot of tools at your disposal to start pushing your surfaces or pushing your models in a different direction, right? And the important thing to remember is, when I first started working this way, I found it difficult, right? It felt tedious. It felt like work. And at this point, I'm a firm believer that whatever you practice, you become good at, right? And so if you practice and you set the expectation that all of your primary surfaces are going to be clean, single span or very close to single span, right? We're going to talk later about near single span surfaces and when you might want to kind of bend the rules a tiny bit, right? But right now, you can think about setting the expectation for yourself that your primary surfaces should be single span, and if you can't express the design intent that you want with a single span surface, almost always it comes down to either bad patch layout or bad wrong choice of degree, right? So that's it for episode 7. Hope to see you in episode 8. Thank you so much.